One of the key differences between the crimes that Donald Trump has committed and the efforts to hold him accountable for those crimes and any other individual, bozo citizens such as you or me, in committing crimes, one of the main differences is money. Say if you or if the federal government comes to you or me and says, here's this crime we're accusing you of, and you start going through the court system and you find out the price of retaining an attorney that is licensed to appear before a federal court, and it's many thousands of dollars, and you need that representation, but it's very dear, very hard to come by. And so for most all of us, for almost all defendants, there is a court-appointed attorney who is overworked, and it seems like they'll just go to the prosecutor and say, well, what do you want to do? And it'll be over with. But for someone like Donald Trump, it's a very different situation. He can say, no, we need a special master to look over all these things, and with the power in play, he can get what he wants to delay. There's with us, the prosecutor will write up a confession. He calls it a plea agreement, but he'll write up a confession and say, well, you get to sign this or else we'll add 8 more charges to you. And we fold, bozo citizens like us in general fold like a cheap suit. Almost everybody who's in prison are people who don't have any money, and they didn't have money to hire a private defense, and therefore there they are, off in prison because they signed the plea agreement. That is not the case. If you have money, you can, and even if there is a conviction, you can go on to appeals and just go on and on and on if you have a huge amount of money to spend. If you don't, then you are like all the other people in federal prison or state prison. You get to sit there. So my point is that for a very wealthy, almost all the wealth in this country is either owned or controlled by white men. It's been that way forever. I don't see that changing anytime in the near future. And these individuals, the criminal justice system, the civil justice system is a different animal for individuals like that. Furthermore, there are sophisticated lawbreakers, sophisticated transgressors, and unsophisticated. Again, as I say, bozo citizens like you and me, we are unsophisticated. And as I say, usually fold like a cheap suit. Very often, in the course of interrogation, people admit to things they haven't done with the promise that, hey, if you just say you've done this, then we'll let you go home, which is, of course, a tremendous lie. But a lot of people do fold under that kind of pressure after hour after hour after hour after hour of interrogation. And that doesn't happen to sophisticated transgressors. They know to shut up and never say a word. They know that the police who are interrogating them are not there to be the good guys to help them. They are there to get a confession. They are there to solve the case and find someone for whom the transgression can be accounted. But if a sophisticated criminal knows to stay quiet, a sophisticated criminal will know all the ins and outs of what is right to do and what is wrong to do. Their attorney will be there at a moment's notice. All the things that don't happen for people like you and me. These are some and all, many of the tactics that Donald Trump has used, because he is a white man with a great amount of power and a great amount of money and tons and tons and tons of privilege. He is as spoiled as the day is long, and has never been held accountable for anything he's ever done in his entire life. So when he appears to believe that the law does not apply to him, he has great justification for believing that, because so far in his entire life, because of the money and power that he has and his father throwing money at him, the law has not applied to him. Let's get into a few of the crimes, and it's kind of a depressing category to try to categorize some crimes before he became president that I think are substantial. Laundering Russian oligarch money through Deutsche Bank, using high-end properties in New York. High-end real estate in New York, it would be an ideal way, and continues to be an ideal way of laundering money for foreign governments and for dirty money coming through the United States. Deutsche Bank was a great help, and the Russian oligarchs would back the loans that Trump made. He could default on one loan and immediately get another, because Putin would tell his... And Russian oligarch does nothing without Putin knowing. And that's something also. In a crime family in Donald Trump's world, nothing happens without his okay. Before he became president, the first time he said, "Russia, if you're listening, I hope you can do this for me to get these emails from my political opponent." In my opinion, at that point, that's when the perp walk should have happened, because soliciting help to win an election from a hostile foreign power, that's illegal, and that was clearly what is done. And I just think that we didn't have the guts at the time to stand up and say, that's illegal, you're out of the running, Republicans can find another candidate for office. Oh goodness, Trump University and the Trump Foundation. Trump Foundation was put out of business. Trump University was put out of business, and they had to pay a huge fine. Maybe there's been other situations like that. Tax fraud, insurance fraud, using campaign finances to pay off Stormy Daniels. There were a lot of things before. Trump ran out of all of his money in the 90s, and that's when he began laundering money for the Russian mob, in my opinion. During the presidency, there was a Ukraine phone call, and this is very important. Trump is sophisticated enough to know you do not use emails. All the people that have been tripped up by emails that they've sent. Do not write letters. Do not put anything in writing. It will be used as evidence against you. When Trump wants to suborn James Comey, he has him to dinner, makes sure there's nobody around, and then tells him he wants his loyalty to be to him personally rather than as a public servant. You make sure, and the times that he's gotten in hot water, such as trying to blackmail Ukraine into attacking a political opponent with money that Congress had already designated to go to Ukraine. He had no legal right to hold up those funds, and using his position as president to get Ukraine to stop. But the trick is, it was a telephone call, and we had the record of the telephone call. It was crazy to call up the Secretary of State in Georgia, as I recall, if I have the title right, and attempt to falsify the election. maybe he didn't think that the other man would be taping the phone call, but he was. And it's when things are written down, when things are taped, that's when life becomes difficult. Obstruction of justice, threatening to get rid of the Attorney General if people didn't stop investigating his ties with Russia, and the fake electors that were representing themselves as the true and faithful electors for the presidency. Oh goodness, conspiracy regarding January 6th, because it is illegal to attempt to stop Congress in its duties. That's illegal, and so you get yourself impeached for that. Oh gracious, stealing those government documents and taking them. Why would Trump steal them? Everybody's going, I can't imagine why Donald Trump would steal nuclear secrets. Oh goodness. He steals things that are valuable to him, and he knows for a fact that he is above the law and will never be touched by the law. That's been his life experience all his life long. He's very justified in believing that he will never be accountable for anything that he's ever done. So to sell to that country what our viewpoint insofar as their nuclear readiness, shoot, $1.50, I'll take it. You know, it really doesn't matter. Anything that will give him power and money, he's up for it. There is nothing too dastard to do to increase his power and money. And so why would you want all these top secret documents? Because they're valuable. And as long as they're valuable, he can use them to get money and power for himself. Now, you know, all these things are various crimes, and shoot, the worst thing for me that Trump has done is his response to the COVID epidemic. And as far, I mean, the Constitution says that it's the responsibility, if you're going to follow the Constitution, to promote the general welfare. Can he ever be prosecuted for that? No. Is he responsible for that? In my opinion, yeah. If there's a huge fire downtown where I live, and the firemen get there, and then they decide, you know what? We're not being paid enough to fight this fire. Until we get our grievances addressed insofar as pension and benefits, we're not going to touch this fire. In that case, did they cause the death of the 140 people who died in that fire? Hypothetically speaking. No, they didn't cause the fire. Yes, they caused the death of those people. And for Trump to mock people who wore masks and to say, hey, this thing's going to be gone, and hydroxy, take your hydroxy that does no good, or the horse deworming medicine, or the swallowing Clorox and sword swallowing a a fluorescent light bulb or something. These things killed many, many people, delaying the response, making sure that there was no coordinated response, but leaving the states to do whatever they would do. This is all because he felt that the COVID epidemic reflected poorly on him. And it wouldn't have reflected poorly on him if he had done his duty, but he didn't. In my opinion, that's a crime. Will he ever be prosecuted for it? No, of course not. Of course not. And that is why, for Al Capone and John Turco and the Guinea brothers of mob fame in Chicago, they were not prosecuted for all the murders that they did. Particularly Al Capone. He was prosecuted on tax fraud. And the same thing with Trump. He's being prosecuted for tax fraud in New York, and you might think, tax fraud? Good night. Look at all the other horrible, horrible crimes. Well, it is only reasonable for a law enforcement agency to prosecute a person where they think they have an easily provable case, rather than going for the most depraved thing that the individual has done. And that may well be the case with Donald Trump. He's the target of many different investigations at this point, and he has lots of power and money. That special master, the only purpose is to delay. It's worked in the past for him, and as I've said before, I'll say it again, it's sickening, it's tiresome in the extreme, but it should not be surprising. It's the same the whole world over, wherever you go. It's the same the whole world over. It is a crying shame. It's the rich who get protected and the poor that get the blame.